Welcome to the Fund Your Retirement podcast.
I mean, just to get it into to how the average person might understand is buying a property it's like buying a property, but on a much bigger scale, isn't it? There's much more moving parts, there's people involved, bigger turnovers and things like that. But for a lot of people, buying their first rental property is quite foreign, isn't it? They don't really know, and people go on training courses for that, don't they, to learn how to develop a property portfolio. It's just like you're buying a business and running that the same way that somebody would buy a property and then extract the rental income for that for their whatever they want to use it for.
The other beauty of this model is that if you buy a property, you'll tend to have a mortgage that you have to pay off over like 20 years. So you don't get that full asset value for however 20 years. With buying businesses, the loans only tend to last for 3 years or three to 5 years.
Yeah.
So after 3 to 5 years, you fully own
the business.
that business.
Yeah. Well, there's some that's really interesting as well, isn't it? Hello and welcome back to the Fund Your Retirement podcast. I'm Lee Cleesby, the co-founder of Fund Your Retirement, welcoming you back to your weekly insights from our expert guests in business, finance and wealth building strategies, helping you fund your retirement. Today's guest has quite the resume. Bethan Jepson is an award-winning entrepreneur who has grown multiple six-figure companies from legal to recruitment and is now a partner at Allied Global Engineering, where Bethan and her team acquire engineering businesses from retiring founders. Bethan and her team have already acquired 2 businesses in the last 12 months with a turnover of 4.7 million. On top of all that, Bethan is also the host of the Millionaire Secrets podcast and founder of Women in Engineering and the Success Circle Network. Bethan is here to talk about entrepreneurship and acquiring established businesses from retiring founders as a means of generating outsized returns. Hello, Bethan. Thank you for joining us today.
No worries. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I've really been excited about having this conversation as well. Ever since we're connected, I've been looking into what you do with buying your businesses, and you've got some journey. I mean, your resume is pretty extensive. It's really impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy few years.
Yeah, enjoyable though.
I would say yes.
Highs and lows, as in all parts of life, isn't there?
Extremely highs and extreme lows, I would say, which is part of the reason why I've ended up doing what I'm doing now, being part of a team. So it's not just me on my own anymore. There's 3 of us who are business partners, all in it together. One of my business partners is my dad. Yeah. So, it's in terms of, business is always hard, but,
of course.
At least now I've got the support network.
You've got support there, haven't you? Yeah. And I mean, some people say a good business is like a little family, but yours actually is a little family, isn't it?
I know our 3rd business partner, he's a German he actually lives in Cyprus, so he's pretty remote. He comes over, every now and then, and he just spent a month with us recently in one of the businesses. But anyway, he's like my adopted brother. He doesn't quite know what he's got himself into. So
it really is like a family then, isn't it?
I know, I don't think he knew that was what he was getting himself into.
Yeah.
That's how it's ended up.
How I always like to start the episode off, Beth, and I always like the guests to share a little bit about their journey, their backstory, how they got started, all the way to where they are, just so the audience can get to know, who's on and really appreciate the value that they're bringing. So, all the way from, how you got started in your own sort of career job, all the way to where you are now, literally acquiring £5 million turnover businesses, which is what we'll get to shortly. So yeah, how did you? I don't know actually if we've got time, because I've been looking at your resume and that's it. Maybe we can do a condensed version.
I'll try and do the short version.
Yeah.
I suppose there's a few pivotal moments in my kind of career in life that's really had an impact. I suppose the very first, if I'm being honest, completely open and honest, is that, so my parents fostered children like my whole childhood.
Yeah.
So like my whole kind of childhood, which is where your brain forms and your habits form and your view on the world forms. Like that whole period was pretty rocky. It was very unpredictable. You know, there was lots of good moments, don't get me wrong, but there was also lots of like, you know, quite terrifying moments as well.
Right.
But what it really, I think why that had such an impact was that it kind of prepared me for that life isn't this smooth sailing upwards trajectory.
Resilience. Like, it helped develop resilience.
You know, I think that's true. And it also, I think as well, it also instilled in me like really strong like family values. And why I've done what I've done in terms of the decisions I've made about businesses, career. A lot of that has kind of stemmed like from the ultimate me, like the ultimate question of, well, does this allow me to like have the relationships that I want, that really matter to me? For me, that's the most important thing in my life and world. Is my relationships with my family, my husband, friends. Like, you know, that's really what matters to me. So so that was kind of like the first thing I suppose is important.
Well, that built a foundation, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think you get a sense as well of like what the world is really like, which I think a lot of my friends growing up, you know, none of them had experienced like real trauma until they were like, you know, they broke up with their first boyfriend when they were like 20. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
when you said that, that's what popped into my head then as well. Having the first breakup.
Yeah, exactly. Like it puts a lot into perspective. Anyway, so there was that. The second thing I think was like I was really hardworking in school, so I got really good academics, and I went to really good universities, did an undergrad, did a master's in environmental science. So the reason that's important, I think, is because I've always had this thing in me that I want to like help the world. Like I want to make a real contribution. You know, when I was a teenager, I thought like environmental science would be the way that I would do that. Really passionate about the environment and animals, but I couldn't get a job after uni, despite, you know, getting all the great grades and sacrificing a lot in order to get those grades. I just couldn't get a job. Which I think, you know, a lot of people experience. But I think again, it just triggered something in me that was like, why should somebody else have this control over my life? Like, why is it someone else's decision of like
whether you get to live what you want to do?
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of then got instilled.
So the entrepreneur bug is kind of hatching there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But
at a young age.
Yeah, I didn't really know. At that age, you don't really process things yet. You're still kind of reacting to life. So when I couldn't get a job, I then ended up working for my dad's business back then. So he'd had this business, a legal recruitment business, since I was young. And I'd done like work experience there as a kid. So I kind of knew it back to front, basically, by the time I arrived as like a full-time employee after university. And I think because of kind of my upbringing, the fact that it was my dad's business and therefore I really cared about it, even though I have no idea about legal recruitment. It's not my background whatsoever. I ended up in a small business, which is agile, which is quite flat structured, with this like crazy desire to solve problems, because that's kind of what the environmental science thing was all about, solving big problems. With an expectation that things aren't easy, because that's kind of what my childhood had given me. And just over the course of, you know, the next months and a couple of years, I just really grew with that business. And basically from day one of entering through the door, it was like, my dad called me like the admin assistant was my job title. 18 months later, I was running the business. I was 23, 24. Not everybody was okay with that. Some people loved it.
Yeah.
But it taught me a lot about business, obviously.
I can imagine.
I learn about finance, I had to learn about people, I had to learn about marketing, I had to learn in a small business, you kind of have to know a bit of everything. You have to be a bit of a jack of all trades, which is hilarious because like I'd always been called a jack of all trades. Like, and I think people meant it as a bit of a, I think people meant it to like, because I always got good grades in everything. It was like, you'll never be good at any one thing because, do you know what I mean? I think people said it not necessarily.
You spread yourself around a bit thin, but actually as an entrepreneur, that's kind of what you end up doing, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And I think as well, the good thing about being a jack of all trades in business is that you don't get sucked into any one thing and you don't get lost in the weeds because you're so interested in other things that you can't let yourself get sucked in.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's something like my dad openly admits that he struggles with, is like, in that with the legal recruitment business, especially because he was a lawyer, he just gets sucked into doing the recruitment himself. And so, well, I mean, it's a great opportunity for me because that left the rest of the business for me to run. But for him as like a business owner, it's not ideal to get sucked into any one thing.
So you came in and essentially run the business for him by the 23, 24-year-old, and I guess that freed him up to do other things as well, focus on other things, perhaps developing and growing the business, possibly.
Well, I think it freed it. Yeah, I think it did, but I think because he didn't have that clarity of like what else he could do. I think for him, to a certain extent, he'd use that business as a bit of a distraction from the fact that he wasn't necessarily pursuing his own, you know, passions and things. So what I noticed is I developed as an entrepreneur, and I was literally like, I was obviously doing a full day in the office, and then I'd go out every evening networking.
Right.
And, you know, so I was meeting all sorts of people. I was going to events like that event I told you about the beginning, led by like, you know, branding experts and millionaires, and I was just so interested in everything. So as I was kind of like soaking up information, I think he got a little bit like, not jealous, but like a little bit envious maybe of like the freedom I had.
Right.
That, because I think when you're young, you are free to learn. Like no one has pigeonholed you yet. Like no one has stuck this like identity label on you. Even if you have a degree in whatever, like you still don't, you know, doesn't mean you're pigeonholed.
There's an element of responsibility as well, isn't it? I don't know, outside of my own development, as you get older, you develop this sense of responsibility. Usually partners, mortgage, children, they kind of instill a sense of responsibility. But when you're so young, 22, 23, there's you, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, perhaps maybe either living at home with parents or you've got some rent to pay, which is no big deal, is it? You're just like, you're out exploring and enjoying yourself.
No, exactly. And I think it's very easy to become trapped like that. And I would say he certainly was. So so it's funny. I mean, the reason
you actually shown your father that you actually helped him become a little bit introspective in terms of what he was doing with his life and where he was going. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And he says that all the time. Because the reason I talk about my dad quite a lot when I tell my story is because our journeys are so interwoven.
Yeah.
And obviously we've ended up back together now, which is, it's all relevant. But it is funny because I think I left his business in 2017. I was supposed to leave a bit earlier, but I had an injury which I needed to recover from. That's a whole other story. So in 2017 I left his business, not because of any not because, you know, I didn't enjoy it or I'd reached this point where I wanted to see what else was out there and what else I could do. And fundamentally, as I say, I love business, but I don't love legal recruitment.
Yeah.
So there's only so long you can kind of like trick yourself into just this is a business. Actually, it's a legal recruitment business.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I get what you're saying.
And I just did like I would say from 2017 to 2019, I was just experimenting with everything. Some things worked really well. Like I had a health product business that did really well. And I grew a team so they could kind of, it wasn't all on me.
Yeah.
Because that was something I learned also early on that you don't want to do.
Delegate.
But then I did loads of other things that didn't work. Like I tried to launch this membership, and the idea, well, I'm not going to go into it. Anyway, the membership failed miserably.
It's very, business is trial and error, isn't it?
100%. And meanwhile, I was kind of, I started off as like marketing consulting, as like just for the high value clients. Basically, I wanted some income that I knew, like, at least I can live off this, and then I can, play.
Yeah.
and build other things. So consulting was kind of like my stable money. And then, it was funny because I'd launched this women's network whilst I was still in the legal recruitment business. And at the time, like, that was my first kind of venture on my own. And I didn't know how to monetize it. Like, I hadn't quite got to that. I'd figured out how you grow a community, but I hadn't figured out how you make money from that community yet. But what I realized was, like, the businesses that then, like the consulting, the coaching, the health product business, all my customers and clients from that were coming from this women's network.
So you had monetized it indirectly.
Yeah, but I hadn't really, I just hadn't really figured that out yet.
Yeah.
So I would say 2017 to 2019, I was doing lots of different things, just experimenting. As I say, some things worked, some things didn't. And even the things that worked, I didn't always enjoy them. But then I had to make a choice. Well, what's more important? Like, because ultimately, can I imagine myself doing this for like the next 10 years? No. And to be honest, like the thing that I'm doing now, like the buying businesses with my dad and our other business partner, like this is the only thing I've really experienced where I've gone, I can imagine doing this for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like nothing else. Even the consulting and coaching, it's good fun. It's really fulfilling, and you get to make a difference. But
can I interject there? Sorry.
Yeah.
Why is this so fulfilling then? What is it that really ticks the boxes then? I
think it's the relationships. It's because that's like my biggest thing that's important to me. Like, this is the first business where I feel like those relationships are really meaningful. Yes, because one of them is my dad, but also in like the team that we've built and like the businesses we've acquired and the staff in those businesses. And even like, because I've launched a new kind of women's network in the engineering sector, because that's kind of principally where we are.
Yeah.
Even the women in this sector are just so different in terms of their just commitment and willingness to help.
Yeah. Okay.
I've never experienced that before. So everything just feels really meaningful. Every connection feels real. And especially like, in the coaching consulting world, there's a lot you need to do on like social media and, being out there in the world. Because that's, how you stand out. And I just felt like a lot of it was so fake. Like, I just felt like everything was an exaggeration. Like, oh, look how successful I am.
Yeah.
Look at this fancy holiday I'm on.
Yeah. Look at me in this restaurant eating this meal.
Yeah. Even like, look at this person I've met. Like, I just felt, obviously those things are real and those things are fun and meaningful to a certain extent. But, that, I don't know, I just felt like there was an element missing of what was true and real for me, human being.
Yeah.
So I think that's it really.
So how did you then come to that point now where you literally, is it 3 businesses that you've now acquired, or is it 2 and you're on a third?
3.
Yeah, two and you're just about you're just about finalizing the third one now, aren't you?
Yes.
So you've gone through from working or running your dad's legal recruitment business, and then you and your father ended up going in partnership, and I'm guessing acquired your first business.
Yeah.
How did that come about? How did the idea to acquire, why don't we start buying businesses, Dad? It's not a common thing that most people think of, is it? It's like, hey, Dad, I've been thinking, why don't we buy a business?
No,
not just a small, but I know your turnover is between 1 and 15 million. Is that right? The turnover?
Well, it's 1 and 5 million.
1 and 5, sorry. So it's not exactly a small business either. It's not, just a
no, big enough to be interesting, but small enough
to keep you busy. Yeah. So how did that idea come about then with you and your dad then?
So it's funny because we both arrived at it separately before we came together. So I went on a retreat with my business mentor in 2018. And by this point, I'd been doing coaching and consulting for like a year and a half. And I'd already started to be like, I'm not sure where this is going. What's what's my future? And that's kind of why I went on this retreat, because I really wanted some clarity on like, where's this going to take me?
Yeah, okay.
And there was a few like kind of successful business people there, and I got chatting with this American guy, and he just asked me like, have you ever thought about like brokering or buying businesses? And I was like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. What do you mean? Please explain.
Yeah. So, he was just throwing some thoughts out there, but he was kind of saying like, well, if you're helping people grow their businesses, then what if you help them also then sell those businesses, or equally you could buy them from them and implement your own growth knowledge, and kind of then you have the benefit of having that asset and the growth and the monthly salary and all the good stuff that comes with it. And I was just mind blown. It never really occurred to me. So despite like the thought landed, and I got very, very excited, and I wrote all these notes in my diary. I'm sure I could find it and read it out for some giggles, but I didn't really know how to to bridge that gap between where I was and how to get there.
Yeah, from where you were there just as a concept to actually the execution of it.
And equally, I was a bit nervous that a young woman in my 20s who looks young, like I don't even look old, I look young.
You do.
Like people think I'm like 19 sometimes, which is really annoying, but anyway.
But later on in life, that'll be an asset, a huge asset.
That's what everyone keeps telling me.
Yeah.
So I was a bit worried about, would people think I'm credible? Would people trust me enough? Like, would I have to do 10 times the legwork?
It's all the self-doubt, self-sabotage, isn't it? A lot of people have ideas, but they squash them before they even begin to start them, isn't it?
100%. So I was definitely squashing them.
Yeah.
And then so I came home, and then life went back to normal, cracked on with my like coaching consulting stuff. And then my dad, he was kind of getting unhappier in the legal recruitment business. He'd taken on a new business partner, but they weren't really getting on.
Right.
He thought when I left, he's like, I think he enjoyed having that person to bounce ideas off, but he found the wrong person to replace me, basically.
Couldn't quite live up to the
not sure anyone can, but so he was just coming to the end of his tether, and he got a flyer through the door, which was like a learn how to buy businesses advertising flyer.
Right.
I don't know what it was. I think because similar to me, he's always loved business, but he's never found the vehicle where he's been able to really fulfill that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because with the legal recruitment, he just kept getting stuck in the weeds because he used to be a lawyer. So he understood, he needed something he could be a CEO, not just So I think he was like, oh, maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is the thing that will, allow me to do that. But it wasn't. Like, it was a massive, massive risk. It was £60,000 to do this.
Right.
This training course, basically.
That's how much the training was.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he paid it.
He really wasn't happy, was he? where he was.
No. Yeah. I think it just goes to show, like, if you really want to change your life, you
take the bull by the horns.
Yeah, you should do it.
Yeah.
So he went on this training course, which was very, very extensive. I think it probably was worth £60,000. And it just taught him, like, all the logistics, to buying a business. He was already pretty good with numbers anyway, but he just developed that skill set, being able to analyze numbers, being able to contracts and reading and editing contracts, and the kind of the boring stuff that I definitely wouldn't want to get hooked into.
Coming from a lawyer background, though, I guess that probably helps as well with that side of it.
100%. And also, like, being a lawyer, it is like a people business. Like, you have to be able to read people and negotiate, and these skills are just, well, they're essential for buying businesses.
Negotiations, a lot of negotiations, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I think it's the reading people bit that's the actual really important thing. And both me and my dad are very good at that for whatever reason.
So your dad goes on this course, and then at a similar time, you've been introduced to it by your own sort of journeys by an American businessman. At this point, are you talking about them together? No, you're still not, right? No.
No, because I think it comes back to what we were discussing at the start of, like, if you've got this idea that you think is going to change your life, if you voice it and somebody close to you says, "Oh, that's ridiculous.
We're so silly."
Yeah.
Something like,
Yeah. Then you're scared of that. Like, you're scared of, because I don't know, for whatever reason, we can believe people even if they have no expertise in that field. Do you know what I mean?
We trust the ones that we love to look after us or look out for us, don't we? We trust them, we love them, and if they say, "Oh, don't be so silly, that'll never work." Oh, exactly. Okay. And exactly. That's the idea squashed right there, isn't it? Sometimes.
And I think as well, like, my dad, who he was, I think, like 58 or 59 during this time. So he's not a spring chicken. Yeah. I mean, he is very active, and he, for his age, does a lot. But he, like you said before, the responsibilities, the obligations, or my wife think, this business that has been fairly stable despite recessions and things, throwing that away and starting again at 58, 59.
And a sizable outlay as well, just to learn how to do it. So
exactly, like, no guarantees
it's even you're even going to make anything back on it, so it's a big risk.
Exactly. So we didn't really tell each other anything about our thoughts. And basically then it was basically the pandemic hit. So obviously that was March 2020 for us in the UK.
Very difficult year for a lot of people.
Very difficult, and I think that pretty much sums up kind of my 2020. It was just
locked up.
So I'd carried on with the consulting, even though part of me knew that it wasn't really going anywhere, and I wasn't really all in it, really, because I didn't really want to be doing it. And then obviously when the pandemic hits, and you have to adapt this business that you're not really bothered about anyway.
So you would have to go everything online as well, whereas I'm guessing you were probably a lot of person to person, was it?
I was doing a bit of a mixture, really, but a bit of both. But I liked the bit of both because for obvious reasons.
We're social creatures, aren't we?
Exactly.
We need to physically see each other, people are.
Exactly. So I was just miserable. So I'm not gonna lie. In 2020, it got to about September 2020. I was probably getting into like depressed
Right.
zone. And it was funny because my brother, being also the entrepreneurial cat that he is,
Yeah.
He'd had this opportunity to kind of help PPE, like basically help export PPE from the US and also other places in the end from like Asia, because he has loads of connections all over the world. So he kind of wrote me into that. Well, I say he wrote me, and I was probably begging him at the time. I needed something else to
Help
like
me.
yeah, I was just so I just needed I needed a change. So I was kind of doing this, and in September 2020 I went on holiday with my dad for like a week, just the two of us, and I was working on this like little PPE business, and he was basically working on an acquisition. And I was just looked at him and I was like, I want to be doing what you're doing. Like, I want to be in this with you. Like, I want it, because we always talk about it anyway. Like, he acquired the first business in our portfolio in May 2020. So we'd done the first acquisition by the time he went on this holiday. And I just kept wanting to know about it. I just wanted to know what was going on, like day in, day out. It was probably a bit annoying, really. I was always bothering him, like, what's going on? And I even tried to, like, I was like, why don't I come in and be like, help with the people side of things, develop the people. So he gave me like a role early on as like head of people. And I was doing like, so I was doing a bit of that and then coaching. And so I was kind of doing this like, one foot in,
one foot
out.
in. Yeah, I was just going to say 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Yeah.
But yeah, I just reached a point where I was like, why am I keeping a foot in something that
you're not enjoying?
And I think
not fulfilled.
Part of me was worried though that I was self-sabotaging a little bit as well. So I was a bit nervous to let it go, because I was like, well, what if I'm just doing this because it's been a hard year and I'm giving up? So I was kind of quite stubborn about it.
So you are right. In business, sometimes there is a point where you do have to say, right, that's it, line in the sand, not going any further. And that's quite difficult as well, because usually the individual has put a lot of time, money and effort into that particular path, and just to say, right, that's it, no more. It's a tough 100%. Decision, isn't it? It's like ending a relationship, isn't it? You've been with a partner for X number of years, and all of a sudden you get to a point where you say, I can't go any further. It's the same with the business, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So
I guess that point came because, two and almost 3 businesses later.
No, absolutely. Well, as I say, despite, still the pandemic obviously carried on through 2021, and I went full time in our new business in January 2021. My dates right here. So despite 2021 being quite up and down, like I've just had such a better time of it. Like I've just felt more at ease, less stressed, more connected, more like purpose driven. You know what I mean? Like, and it just feels like there's a future, which is pretty game changing.
Well, you're buying the businesses off retiring founders, is it correct?
It's not exclusive to retiring founders, but that's like 90% of
the 2 businesses you've got. Were they retiring?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So obviously, if someone wants to sell a business, you're open to have a chat with them, whether they're going to set up another business or whatever. If you think that like that person is then going to retire and enjoy the rest of their years very comfortable after what they've spent many years building, that's a reward in itself, isn't it? And then
100%.
So also
stories you hear about these like founders, working ridiculous hours for 40 years, all the sacrifices they've made. One guy was like, I've always wanted to buy like a Corvette from America and get it shipped over, and
has he bought one? Did he buy one?
Well, this is it's a bit of a long story, but not yet.
Yeah, but he's looking.
Yeah, the thing is this is the other thing we found is people say all these things like, oh, I'm ready to go and live on a beach and smoke cigars all day or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you've worked your ass off for 30 years, you can't just switch off.
Yeah.
Like, it's really difficult to make that transition. So that's, when it comes to people, it's one of the intricacies you just have to be aware of. Like, people say one thing and do another.
Yeah, well, that's their identity, isn't it? I've had a few financial advisors on the podcast, and they say, for those who have come up to retirement, they do actually struggle as they make the transition, because who they are and who they were, they're suddenly not. and they've got to find a new, well, as we've been discussing here, a new sense of purpose, a new identity. So
100%, yeah.
Well, then you've got the team as well that now is perhaps concerned that maybe the founder, who they're going to sell it to, what's going to happen to the business, is it going to get wound, is it going to get integrated to a larger organization and closed down, but then all of a sudden you've given them security for their future, which is obviously quite rewarding as well.
100%. And the teams that we've had the privilege of working with so far, and even the ones where the acquisition got a certain way down the line but it didn't complete for whatever reason, but we got to meet some of those key people. Like, I think that's why I was saying about the engineering industry, like, the people in it are just amazing. Like, I've been really blown away by the quality of the people in these businesses and how much they care. It's really lovely. It is. But
why engineering then? Why did you? So your dad was a lawyer, legal recruitment. You said your journey. Why engineering? What was the decision to take that path? Because you must have done your due diligence of which path you were going to go down.
I mean, the short answer is that the opportunity came up and we took it.
Right. So
I mean, the thing with it is, it's like anything. When you're doing something for the first time, you don't get to have the perfect scenario.
The first one is always the hardest.
Yeah, 100%.
The first sale of any business will 100%. Always be the hardest.
100%.
Yeah. The opportunity arose, you took it with both hands, and then you're like, hey, actually, this is a path we could go. So
100%. And when we think about our own goals as, business owners, my dad, like I say, he's approaching, well, he's in his 60s now. So, he doesn't want to be working for the next 20 years. He's trying to think, he's thinking about his exit plan.
Exit strategies and that,
who's like so obsessed with like family and relationships, and, also I love traveling. And for me, life is more than just about working 8 hours a day. It has to be more.
Yeah.
And then our other business partner, he works remote from Cyprus. I mean, there's a reason for that. He didn't just move to Cyprus for the hell of it. He wanted a better lifestyle for him and his family.
Yeah.
So we're all these people that are considerate of that. So then, you then, all your decisions then revolve around, well, how are we going to make this easier? How are we going to make our desired reality easier? And logically, if you have one business in the engineering sector and you have those systems, you put those systems in place, you learn how the workshop needs to be laid out to be most efficient. You learn about the people and what engineers really need to be happiest and high performing. You're gaining all this knowledge in the industry, which, if you have a second engineering business, you can then just copy and paste. Rather than going, oh, right, now we're in marketing, and then you have to learn like all the intricacies of that industry and the systems and the people, and that's just going to keep you busy. Whereas if you're copying and pasting, it just means you can leverage your time a bit better.
You've done all the hard work on the first one, creating all the systems and strategies and procedures, as you've said, and then just copy. It makes sense.
And imagine, it's the same mindset to property, isn't it? You do the first house up, you learn about what that needed and what had to get done with that house, and then you probably buy a similar house next and do the same thing. You learn and evolve, don't you? Learn and grow.
And you develop the connections and the relationships with the people that help you. After you've done your first one or two, all of a sudden you've got the accountant, you've got the solicitor, you've got the builder, you've got the plumber, you've got the electrician, and you're just, by the time you're doing 2, 3, 4, you're using that same little network of support network, aren't you?
100%. I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because the beauty of engineering is that there's so many like subcategories within it. So if you, like, for instance, our first business is something called a CNC precision engineering business. So basically making like small bits. Small bits.
Very technical. There'll be an engineer at that company now listening to this going, we make what?
Hashtag not an engineer. But then our second business is then a fabrication business. So they make they bend, mold, cut sheet metal basically into shapes to stick on the side of lorries or whatever, or the side of whatever buildings as well. But the customers that need CNC also need fabrication, and vice versa. Of course,
they'll intertwine, won't they?
Yeah. So then you find you're building this customer ecosystem. So you acquire one customer, but it provides income to your CNC business, your fabrication business, your injection molding business, your paint shop. Like you're built, let's say you're building an ecosystem where everything works together. And equally then, from a branding perspective, when you're going out there to try and buy more businesses, if you're saying to people, your business is going to have a home, it's going to retain its brand, but it's going to benefit from being part of this ecosystem. It's going to get fed customers from other places. We're going to share the training and development between businesses. So your people will benefit from learning from people over here. And they see that there's a bigger picture, but it's not like this monster that's going to like eat them up. It's something that allows them to thrive as an independent business,
but still have the benefit of all the different resources that businesses A and B and C also have. Like you say, business A gets a customer, so high probability that business B and C will benefit as well through other streams of work as well. So I like it. So I mean, one of the things that I was really looking forward to this conversation is exactly what we've been sharing, because one of the ways on the podcast I want to share is ways of acquiring wealth, building wealth, income, generating returns. Also as well, if there's any entrepreneurs who are any retiring founders or any business owners that are looking to sell, he is a great person to have a chat with, but also share the from the founder side, from selling the business, that there is opportunities out there to actually sell and retire and enjoy yourself. So do you also look to take on private investors' capital in this, or is this all purely through wealth sort of management companies that you deal with, or do you take on private investors?
So we have for our what will be our fourth acquisition, which will be shortly behind our third acquisition, if all goes to plan.
So you've got two in the pipeline then?
Yeah. Well, we've got quite a few in the pipeline, but two that are very close.
We'll just come back to that. Sorry, we'll come back to the investors' capital. So have you had some others fail in the past then? Others that have not gone through?
Oh yeah, loads.
Right, okay.
Too many. To be honest, that's kind of, in terms of how we delegate roles and things within our team, my dad is pretty much exclusively chasing these deals and kind of working them and getting them into the pipeline. So he's full-time
that's
time on it.
Chasing, looking for deals in the marketplace, and then seeing if there's any sort of development with them.
And the thing that I've certainly learned the time doing this, the longer the acquisition is dragging out, the more time there is for things to happen to cause it to fail.
Right.
Mostly because of people. It's mostly as I said, people getting greedy last minute, people losing interest in their business because they've mentally checked out, so they've stopped doing important activity, which
and the business starts to wow, yeah. Well, I thought that would have been one of them, but interesting.
It's a big one, a huge one. And it's always the first red flag we look for when we're, talking to a new, because my dad always brings me along to the meetings just because I'm very good at reading people. But one of the first things I'm looking for is information about people's motivations, because there's a fine balance. So there's three ways for people to be, really. They're either going to be so fed up of their business that even the talking about selling it means they've mentally checked out, and they're off doing other things. They've moved to Lanzarote.
They've already gone. They're on the plane.
They've left the team to it, and they're just gone. I mean, that's a red flag for obvious reasons. The other way that people can be is kind of what I referred to before, is like difficult. It's difficult for them to let go. So they'd start delaying the process at every opportunity. And they don't always understand why they're doing it.
Self-sabotage again, sort of.
And that's the hardest thing. When someone doesn't know they're doing it, it's really then difficult to like raise their awareness, to be like, I think it's because you're just struggling to let go. But remember when you told me that your wife's just bought this caravan and she's waiting to go on your world tour.
She's waiting for you.
Like you have to kind of remind people of this. But anyway, so they end up like just slowing it down and just creating problems where there don't need to be problems. And then there's a sweet spot right in the middle where people care enough still that they're in it and they're going to continue working on the business almost as if they weren't leaving, but they've mentally gone, I am ready to leave. So when the time comes, I'm going to step out and I'm going to make it a smooth transition as possible without causing problems that don't need to be problems. That is when you find somebody who displays that signs that they're that third person, the acquisition will probably be successful.
And through experience of you sitting in on these meetings, you probably can see all the different tells and how, and how the conversations unfold of whether this is going to go on, whether this is going to work out or not.
And at first we gave people the benefit of the doubt, and we'd try and progress stuff anyway, even though we'd seen these signs. But I think now we've got to that place where we kind of know it's not worth it. It's not worth the time, the energy. It's disappointing, and you spend money on lawyers and accountants, and it's just.
So I haven't forgot the investors question, but there's something else I want to ask now from that conversation. so you've got two, three's very close, and you've got another four. You got a fourth in the pipeline. How many? Is the sky the limit, or is there a number that you can comfortably work with and manage? Or have you not thought about that yet?
We've kind of said we want to get to 8 to 10 that all have like strategic value to the group. So
they all interlink, offering each other different sort of services to getting back to what we said earlier.
And we're getting to the point now where we can kind of pick and choose what kinds of engineering businesses we go after. Because we've got this, we've got a bit of a track record now. We've got the vision. We've got a team. We've got the systems. Those systems still need developing a bit because we're only 2 years in. But we're getting to the point now where we could approach business owners and say, I know you've not advertised your business, but we're looking for a business like yours for our group. Here's why. If you're thinking about retiring anytime soon, let me know.
Well, when you've made your first sale, you can then, off your first couple of sales, for sale number 3, you can say, look at what we've done with business X and business Y. It's like you've got that, as you said, track record. It makes it easier, doesn't it? So
and some of those 8 to 10, we might have to acquire 15 businesses in order to find the right 8 to 10. Because not every business again, as we've learned, is as easy to transition on like a cultural level, which is really where when we're talking about kind of growing pains of the actual like transition from ownership, it's mostly like a cultural thing.
Well, people like familiarity, don't they? We like things to stay the same, and change is often uncomfortable, isn't it? So you can imagine for the workforce, there perhaps is a little bit of fear of the change, and it's the unknown, isn't it?
And it's hard to like know what the culture is going to be like before you get in there,
until you're in it.
Because there's no measure, like, you know, with finance and even marketing and sales and customers, there's numbers that represent what you're looking for.
You can look at the numbers, can't you, on a spreadsheet and say, you know, X, Y, Z about the numbers, but the actual people within the business, that takes time, and you've got to be in there and amongst it to really see how that is.
Exactly. So some of the businesses we acquire, we might not keep for the long term because it's just too hard on a cultural level to integrate them into the group.
It's fascinating. It really is. So, investors' capital, private investors. So, we discussed it in our conversation earlier, where you believe that this could actually be as become a commonplace as buying a property. So people use property as part of their retirement portfolio. They buy a handful of houses, and then that becomes retirement income. As we are moving into a decade, probably the next 10 years, where there's going to be a lot of baby boomers retiring, a lot of retiring founders who are going to be looking to sell their businesses. How can private investors get involved in this without probably going down the journey that you and your father went in? How can they get involved with this sort of new sort of way of perhaps funding their retirement?
I mean, obviously it depends on where someone's coming from, but from kind of, my dad is the main one that deals with like the financial investment side, but from the kind of what I've been exposed to, it's actually pretty easy to raise money these days.
Well, we've got these central banks that just keep printing money. So,
exactly.
The economies actually are awash with money, but it's.
And ironically, it's actually easier to raise £10 million plus than it is to raise £1 million.
Wow, there you go. Yeah.
Like, it's actually crazy, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
Equally, like you said, you've got a lot of private investors who don't really want to get bogged down with running a business. Like they've just ran a business and they've got out of that, or maybe they were a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor, or
maybe they were a high-level manager within a business of, say, engineering, or as you say, something.
But they don't feel like they have the skills, the knowledge, or the confidence to be an active, I'm going to buy this business and run it kind of role. So that's what we found with the private investors that we've taken on, is a lot of them are actually engineers. They know the
industry. Do they become a source of knowledge as well for you, and like support, things like that?
100%.
They bring their experience to the table, I guess, don't they?
And some of them, are not based here, so you then also get access to different markets because they have a network in Texas or Germany or wherever. And so, for this fourth acquisition, we've got 3 investors all based in Texas, weirdly. So they've got quite a good idea of what's going on over there. And so we can discuss, how then we're going to, expand into the US.
I have a feeling you're going to be going international soon.
Well, our company is called Allied Global Engineering. So
you've pre-planned it then.
It's always been an aspiration.
It's in the title, isn't it? In the name of the business.
So you can't say we don't have vision. So privately, depending on if you're that investor, like I say, who just wants to leverage their time better, put your money into the team's already there to run the business. but you just get the benefit of, the monthly management fees and the overall asset value, for when that sale takes place. And, from experience, even just, if we talk about the buy to hold strategy, which is obviously common in property.
Yeah.
Pretty similar to kind of where we're at with our strategy. The money you can take out of a business on a monthly basis through management fees is so much more than you can take out of a property through rent.
Right. Yeah.
So, just as an example, like the first business we bought for, I think it was doing 1 million revenue. So, which is a pretty, for us, it's a small business and it's pretty common.
Yeah.
You can take out $5,000 a month very comfortably.
Yeah. Which is a nice income. It's a pretty nice income to live on.
And you don't have to run that business. There's a manager in place, the team's there.
Yeah. Strategies are there and everything. Yeah.
So, and that could be it. You could literally, you could stop there. And, and then the business, you could sell the business in, I don't know, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, whatever.
Yeah. And hopefully get the upside of what the business is then worth, providing that, it develops in the way that one would hope.
100%. And obviously, you need to make sure that team's in place to run and grow the business.
To do that, yeah.
But equally, that's why I just say don't do the first one on your own, at least.
No. Oh, we're not recommending anything here. There's no recommendation going on.
You want to have some experienced people around you for the first few deals.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose really what you're doing is, just to get it into to how the average person might understand is, buying a property it's like buying a property but on a much bigger scale, isn't it? There's much more moving parts, there's people involved, bigger turnovers and things like that. But for a lot of people, buying their first rental property is quite foreign, isn't it? They don't really know, and people go on training courses for that, don't they, to learn how to develop a property portfolio. It's just like you're buying a business and running that the same way that somebody would buy a property, and then extract the rental income for that, for their whatever they want to use it for.
The other beauty of this model is that if you buy a property, you'll tend to have a mortgage that you have to pay off over like 20 years. So you don't get that full asset value for however 20 years. With buying businesses, the loans only tend to last for 3 years or 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So after 3 to 5 years, you fully own
the business.
That business.
Yeah. Well, there's some that's really interesting as well, isn't it? That's brilliant. That's been a brilliant conversation. Really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, thank you, Bethan. Where can people connect with you? Where can they follow you? Where can you learn more about you and Allied Global Engineering as well?
LinkedIn is probably where I'm most active in terms of responding to messages. I do have Instagram, but I don't tend to spend huge amounts of time on there because I don't really like it as a platform. But anyway, follow the story. LinkedIn is the best place, or my email, which is bethan.jepson@alliedglobal.co.uk.
Yeah, brilliant. And I will make sure them links are all in the show notes. So if you're listening or watching, go into the show notes and you can connect with Bethan or email her. If you're a retiring founder, please get in touch. Or if you're a private investor,
100%. Even if you just want to learn more, like if you don't want to commit yourself to either of those camps, but you just want to learn more, happy to educate anyone.
Yeah. And you've also got your own podcast show as well, haven't you? So I'll put a link for that in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bethan. Really appreciate your time and thanks for sharing.
Oh, no, it's been great. Thank you for having me, Lee.
Yeah, cheers. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you don't have to stop there either. We have more videos on the screen for you and lots more insightful content on our channel and at our website fundyourretirement.com. I want to thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.